in our top business story, the total number of property transactions in Dubai halved last month compared with a year earlier as the market slowdown continued. According to the latest figures from the Dubai Land Department, the total number of transactions in the Emirate dropped by 51.8% to 7,311 last month compared with April 2014. The total value of transactions last month was 35.3 billion dirhams, down 37.1% on the previous year. Sales numbers in Dubai have been falling steadily since the end of last year, after the Dubai government introduced tough new mortgage caps and higher transaction fees in an attempt to slow what had been one of the fastest rising housing markets in the world. The fall in volumes was one factor that prompted the consultancy JLL and ratings agency Standard & Poor's to predict that average house prices in the Emirate would fall by between 10 and 20% this year. According to the property consultancy CBRE, average house prices in the Emirate have so far fallen 2% during the first 3 months of 2015. A Geneva-based foreign exchange and commodities market expert has claimed that the world today is witnessing the beginning of the end of US dollar dominance, and the Chinese Yuan will inevitably but gradually rise to become a reserve currency for many central banks in the region and the world. At a media roundtable held in Dubai today, the global head of foreign exchange and precious metals advisory at Credit Agricole Private Banking, David C. Hall, said that as China became the #1 trading partner for the Gulf, the regional countries are all set to witness an increasing level of Chinese currency transactions, supporting cross-border trade and investment flows between China, GCC, and the wider Middle East region. Highlighting Beijing plans to pour $46 billion into Pakistan's infrastructure projects, he said that the geopolitical desires of China are slowly coming forward, and the Asian giant is using its huge currency reserves to establish regional trading routes with some strategic partners. Emphasizing that 25% of global trade is being settled in Chinese currency, Hall stated that China has established currency swap agreements with the central bank of 30 countries, including Qatar and UAE, as more and more governments are comfortable holding Chinese currency. Geneva-based Forex expert said that the upcoming IMF approval vote in November this year, with regards to Chinese Yuan's status as a potential global reserve currency, will determine whether China will ultimately chip away at the US dollar as a global reserve currency over the next few decades.
The dominance of the dollar in global trade is eventually going to end, and it's an ongoing process, and it's irreversible. And that's where I think for this region, the #1 trading partner is China. And whether we like it or not, we have to embrace the fact that one day oil from this region could be sold to China in their own currency and no longer in dollars. And as you've seen recently, we've seen swap agreements set up by the regional banks here. We've seen in Doha, you're going to have the first clearing center for the CNY. And at the same time, you have swap agreements also contracted by Qatar and UAE. And I think more and more, the global world is becoming less and less uncomfortable with holding the Chinese currency. 25% of global trade is now in yuan. And as we move forward, more and more portfolios should be holding that currency.
Dubai-based hotelier Jumeirah Group has reported revenue growth of 5.2% in 2014, down from 8% a year earlier. Across the company's hotels, resorts and residences in Dubai, which includes the Burj Al Arab and Medina Jumeirah complex, the company recorded an occupancy rate of 80.1% and an average revenue per available room of 1,708 dirhams. The first 4 months of 2015 are proving better for Jumeirah, with occupancy levels at 84.6% and RevPAR at 2,018 dirhams. The group said that the UK continued to be its largest source market across its global operations, which includes hotels in the Gulf, Europe, and the US. British consumers represent 15.2% of total room nights sold, and despite the falling ruble, Russia continued to be the second largest source of revenue for the hotel group in 2014. The group announced multiple new hotel management agreements during 2014 in China, Mauritius, and Dubai, as well as in Turkey and Abu Dhabi during 2015. And continuing with our coverage of the Arabian travel market, while the focus was clearly on the major players in the local and regional market and the influence of ATM grows, there are more and more countries and municipalities being represented at the annual show. In the International Pavilion, Peru is one of the countries with a significant presence at this year's ATM, according to tourism officials from the Latin American country. The region as a whole has seen a significant increase in the interest of potential travelers from areas outside of its traditional source market. The travel and tourism sector has been steadily increasing in Peru, with significant investments being made to promote inbound tourism through the development of infrastructure, particularly ahead of the country hosting the Pan American Games in 2019. While Peru can boast of more than 10,000 years of culture and history as the heart of the ancient Inca Empire and home to Machu Picchu, one of the seven wonders of the world, according to tourism officials present at the event, the country also is a place where travelers can journey through deserts, mountains, the Amazons, and beaches.
We always say that Peru has something for everybody. Actually, that's the slogan how we promote Peru. You're talking that we have 60% of our territory is the jungle, which is pristine. 13% of the lungs of the world belong to Peru. Then we have the Andes region, which is the highest in Latin America, and that's where Machu Picchu is found, which is the Inca Empire fortress that is one of the new seven wonders of the world. And then we have 3,000 kilometers of coastline. So you can go from surfing one morning all the way up to the Inca Empire. Peru is one of the little countries that can boast being an empire. You know, there's very few around the world that can be saying that. And on top of that, something that is very important for the Middle Eastern travelers is that Peru has been awarded 3 times in a row the best culinary destination in the world. So in terms of the foodies and in terms of the gastronomic perspective, Peru can show you a bit of everything on every step that you take. This is the 3rd year that we participate in ATM, and every year our participation has been growing. I was actually just speaking with one of the tour operators that has come with us since the beginning, and he was telling me that currently he has a member of the royal family of Saudi traveling around Peru. But the important thing is that he's just not traveling around Peru, he's traveling the whole Latin America through a Peruvian tour operator. So that gives you a scope that it's not just about ATM catering for the UAE, it's ATM and Peru catering for the GCC traveler, for the Middle Eastern traveler. And it's not just about Peru, but it's giving you the whole package of services, which obviously for us is important, that starts in Peru, but Latin America has much more to offer. So if Peru could be your epicenter, as you correctly say, as the UAE could be the epicenter for the tourism destination, then it's a win-win situation for all.
Also present at this event, or this year's event, are representatives from the city of Kyoto, the capital of Japan for over 1,000 years, which was also known as the City of 10,000 Shrines. Through its long and prestigious history, much of the traditional culture of Imperial Japan has been carefully preserved, which, according to officials at the event, creates a repository of cultural excellence that cannot be experienced elsewhere. Kyoto has also made efforts to attract travelers from the increasingly lucrative Middle Eastern and GCC markets, positioning itself as a Muslim-friendly destination, with a website now available for potential visitors as a guide to halal food offerings and hotels that cater to Muslim visitors.
We have more than 1,000 years history, and Kyoto was the capital of Japan, former capital. And we have many temples and shrines, beautiful sceneries, rivers, and many delicious cuisine. And we attract many tourists in the world. The UAE company is very important for us. Kyoto is very famous as a tourist city in Japan, and many domestic tourists visit Kyoto. And many hotels are almost occupied now through the year. But we know that UAE companies, people are very kind of rich, and we know they spend a lot expense. So as a tourist industries, we are very focused on the UAE people to visit Kyoto.